Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order now on Monday, May 25th. This is the Town Planning Advisory Committee. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I also acknowledge that people of African descent have been in Nova Scotia for over 400 years. We honor and offer gratitude to those ancestors of Mi'kmaq and African descent who came before us to this land. We also acknowledge that words alone are not enough and commit to work towards achieving the action items outlined in the calls to action from the Committee for Truth and Reconciliation. We have an agenda before us with several items on it. If any committee members wish to add any items to the agenda, please let me know. And otherwise, if somebody would like to make a motion to approve the agenda as circulated, I see Ms. Delorier has made that motion, and I have a seconder over there of Ms. Johnson. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carried. We have our minutes, which have been circulated from our last meeting of April 27th. If there are any errors or omissions from the minutes, please bring them to my attention. And if there are not, if anybody would like to move to approve the minutes as circulated for the April 27th meeting. Thank you, Councillor Graham. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Ms. Delorier. All those in favor of approving the minutes as circulated, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. So we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is the development agreement application at 448-450 Lower Truro Road. This application is at step 3 of the expanded process. Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Fox, will speak to the report. The owner is WM Fairs and Andrew Rogers, and the applicant is in attendance here, the engineer and architect. So at some point we may ask for one or more of you to speak. But I will now turn it over to Senior Planner, Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as mentioned, this is an application for 448-450 Lower Truro Road and a couple of adjoining properties. It is for a development agreement. So just in terms of little application details, some background information. So it is an application by WM Fairs on behalf of Maki Investments Limited. The application is to enter into a development agreement with the town to permit a multi-unit residential development on lands at 448-450 Lower Truro Road, and as I mentioned, a few other parcels in the area. I'll get into details onto what lands are impacted in a moment. The application was originally made back on October 10th, 2024. It has been previously before this committee on May 26th, 2025, and also on October 27th, 2025. There's been a little bit of a delay in the process to complete a traffic impact study that was done, and also just scheduling conflicts. So in terms of the overall status, the town has a five-step development agreement application process. So we had, again, the meetings, the first and second step were the original meetings that we had back in October and in May and October of last year. So it's been before this committee twice before at those two steps. This is the third and final step, typically that it goes to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. After this meeting, there's generally a recommendation, or at the end of this meeting, there's generally a recommendation from this committee to council, and then council of the Truro Town Council will make, will take that recommendation into consideration along with other information, report from staff, public input, and they'll make their final decision on the application at a public hearing, which will be scheduled for a later date. Likely be July the 6th, I believe, is the first Monday in July. That would be typically when the council meeting would be held, and that's when they would be holding the public hearing. And council would vote on it at that time. So there is an additional opportunities for the public to speak and have their say in the process later on. But this is the third meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting, and this is when the Planning Advisory Committee makes its recommendation. So in terms of the subject properties we're talking about, so there's 5 parcels being affected by this application. Those properties are 15 Salter, 110 Wynn Road, 114 Wynn Road, 448 Lower Truro Road, and 450 Lower Truro Road. And those are the properties outlined in blue there. The subject properties have a total area of around 1.5 acres, or about 6,208 square meters. So this is just a view of the subject properties looking west from McClure's Mills, showing the intersection of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills. This is a high-profile, prominent location in town. It's on McClure's Mills Road, a busy arterial road that's a key connector to Highway 102 and the main body of the town of Truro. It's another view of the subject lands. So 4 of the 5 properties are currently developed with single detached dwellings. The 5th property is vacant. So this is a view of the properties looking east from Salter Avenue. 15 Salter is at the center of the photo, and that would be one of the properties included in this development application. It's another view of the subject properties. This is looking east from Salter Avenue. 15 Salter Avenue is in the center of the photo. Well, center left, or center right, I guess. The properties are generally flat with just a slight slope rising from an elevation of 22 meters at the intersection of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills up to 27 meters on Salter Avenue. So in terms of neighborhood context, so development in the immediate area is comprised of predominantly low-density residential uses, primarily made up of 1 and 1.5 story single detached dwellings. There is a place of worship, Kingdom Hall Jehovah's Witnesses across the street, across McClure's Mills from the subject property. There's approximately 100 meters to the east, just across McClure's Brook, is a busy regional service commercial area along Willow Street. And then the Wade Road Highway 102 commercial area, which would be like the Walmart, and the hospital as well, are approximately 450 meters, or about 1,476 feet to the west. Residential areas to the south, and particularly to the west, are well-established and stable neighborhoods. Development in these neighborhoods over the past 20 years has been pretty limited to single-story townhouse-style units at 66 and 84 Wynn Road, and also the seniors housing housing and care facility at the Wynn Park Villa and Wynn Park itself. So in terms of applicable policies and zoning, so the properties, again, are outlined in blue, if you can kind of make those out there. The properties are situated in both the urban growth and the general residential policy areas. So these are the policies, areas of the town that speak to what sorts of development are supposed to take place on those properties into the future. Policy UG 35 allows council to consider multi-unit residential proposals by development agreement in the urban growth policy area. And then there's also a policy called Policy IM 11 that allows council to consider multi-unit residential developments if they're on an adjacent property or an abutting property. So 15 Salter is zoned general residential, while the remainder of the site is zoned urban corridor, but the bulk of the development with the higher buildings is oriented to the Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills Road, the intersection. So just in terms of background, there's quite a bit of background to go through. It's been quite a lengthy process thus far. So Truro's development agreement process is designed so that the development proposal evolves as we make our way through the process. It's not meant to be a static development application or like something that's frozen in time. It's meant to evolve as we go through based on feedback from the public, based on feedback at meetings such as these, based on the survey responses, based on comments from the committee and also from staff. So this application is no different from any other, and it has evolved and changed throughout the process. So the number of dwelling units and the number of parking spaces has remained consistent, and the way the site's laid out, the configuration of the site and the design of the buildings the configuration of the site has remained the same, but the design of the buildings has changed in response to feedback from the public, as I mentioned, members of this committee and also staff. So this was the original proposal back in April 2025. This was the one that went to the first meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. So it was a multi-unit residential proposal also, consisting of 155 dwelling units in 3 buildings. At the time, there was a 2-story, 8-unit building which is located over here at the corner of Salter and Salter, that weird configuration of streets there, Salter and Salter. And then there is a 5-story 39-unit building and a 9-story 108-unit building. So those are the two buildings over here. So there was some, this is just a view showing the properties looking from Truro, Lower Truro Road looking southeast. The feedback on this proposal at the time included that the height of the buildings relative nearby homes was a concern. There was always a concern, has been throughout the process, about the traffic impact. There's also a discussion about the need for a community meeting for us to have a public open house, which was held back in March. And there was also a concern expressed about pedestrian safety. So in October 2025, the proposal was refined a little bit based on feedback. So it was still, as I mentioned, the number of units and the configuration of the parking, or sorry, the number of units and the number of parking stalls stayed the same, but some of the configuration of the buildings changed somewhat, and there was an additional building added. So there was a one floor added to the building at the corner of Salter and Salter, so it's now 3 floors with 12 units in this particular version. There was a 2 floors added to building 2, which is this building here on the northern edge of the site along Wynn Road. And then there was building 1 over here became just a rectangular shape with a bit of angles cut off at the corners, and as opposed to the L-shaped structure that was originally proposed. And instead of having the wing over closer to Salter Avenue, just out of concern for the property next door here, because it was so tall right next to the single-family dwelling at the end of Salter, townhouses were added, or stacked townhouse units were added here, which are just basically, it's a 6-unit building, essentially. Each unit would have its own entrance. So they're called stacked townhouses, but that would be proposed here. So a 3-story building to provide a bit of a buffer between the low-density residential uses on Salter and the higher-density building on the corner. So this was the view. One of the other comments at the time was the public wanted to see, and the committee wanted to see, more refined renderings. They wanted to know what it was going to look like. So this was the original submission that was done, showing some of the materials and just sort of an overall look of what the building would be. So it's showing a 9-story 84-unit building here and a 7-story 56-unit building here. And note that there's these 3-story podiums that have been added to the building. That's an intent, architect design, and the intent is to break up the facade of the building a little bit, or the mass of the building, so that the height isn't so overpowering. So this is another rendering of the site showing the 3-story 12-unit building at the corner of Salter and Salter again, with the 9-story 84-unit building in the background. And you can see the townhouse units are shown here. 17 Salter is here, and 19 Salter is there as well. So that was that proposal. One of the other concerns that, again, came up at that time and at the earlier meeting was the traffic impact study. So this has been one of the most repeated concerns throughout the process. It was a regular theme in most of the public responses to the online survey. And to address this issue, the applicant has prepared a traffic impact study. So the traffic impact study concluded there are existing issues at the McClure's Mills Road and the Lower Truro Road intersection. These issues are expected to get worse as the town grows, with or without the development. Proposed development will generate approximately 60 vehicle trips during the AM and PM hours, peak hours, which will make the existing situation a bit worse. Traffic impact study also concluded that traffic signals are warranted at the intersection of McClure's Mills Road and Lower Truro Road, James Street, that area. Lights at this intersection would not be, however, a recommended solution, because it would cause traffic to back up into the Willow Street roundabout, which has a whole host of safety concerns associated with that. And the traffic authority will, once I'm complete here, with my presentation, the town's traffic authority will give a brief overview of the results of the traffic study as well, and some of the recommendations. So to address the existing anticipated traffic issues, the traffic impact study recommended that Wynn Road would be extended to connect to Wade Road, and that Lower Truro Road be restricted to right-in, right-out traffic only where it intersects with McClure's Mills Road. And these solutions would address some of the traffic safety issues and provide alternate access to the area based on public feedback. And this was something that was discussed at the public open house that was held back in March. The neighborhood does not seem to be agreeable with the idea of extending Wynn Road and Wynn Road becoming a thoroughfare to connect to Wade Road. So alternatively, the traffic authority is proposing that the town instead revisit the idea of a new roundabout at the intersection of McClure's Mills and Lower Truro. And this was something that was originally discussed back in 2012 when the original plans for the roundabout at Willow Street and McClure's Mills were discussed. There was meant to be 2 roundabouts at that time, and that was one of the things that was discussed, and one of the things we're kind of dusting off and looking at as a potential solution here. So this was the roundabout option, just a blow up of the plan that was done originally back in 2012, but it's been updated and shown on the existing, with some of the existing houses in the area, showing what the proposed roundabout option would look like. So this is expected to identify the traffic issues identified in the traffic impact study and accommodate future growth, including the proposed development. It also keeps in mind that there's development expected to happen on the end of James Street. There's also a large parcel of land that's has development potential at the end of Wade Road and Lower Truro Road. So there is a realistic expectation there's going to be some development in the area. So there's the traffic situation, as the traffic study concluded, is expected to get worse over time. So this would be a way of addressing that solution. So this roundabout would require that the town obtain some additional lands. You can see this little triangle piece of land right here is actually privately owned. And we can see when we superimpose the site plan prepared by the developer and show the area that would actually be required for the proposed roundabout, it shows this little triangular piece of land here that would be needed from the developer to facilitate the development of the roundabout. And it would also mean that in order to do this, there would be some significant changes to the site plan that the developer submitted in order to accommodate that. The applicant has indicated they support the proposed solution and they are willing to adjust their site plan and convey the land to the town for the roundabout. So, one of the other issues that was raised at this point was the helipad and the helicopter flight path in and out of the hospital. So I did quite a bit of research on this. I actually spoke to Transport Canada. I also spoke to the facilities manager at the Colchester East Hants Health Authority, Health Center, excuse me. So after doing a little bit of research, determined that the flight path, there is 2 flight paths in and out of the helipad. The one that's actually recognized and by the Health Authority is one that goes towards the northwest over Truro Heights, actually. But they do have a secondary one, this one here, which is the one that goes over the proposed development site. And it has Transport Canada looks at helipads and their approaches, flight approaches, there is a 12% slope at the bottom of that flight approach. So development's not allowed to extend beyond that 12% slope. So when you look at the grade of the site, the helipad shown here on the left-hand side of the screen, proposed development over here with a 7-story building and a 9-story building are shown here. This is showing the 9-story building, but you can see the development is well below the flight path that would be required by Transport Canada to remain clear. So this graphic does illustrate the proposed buildings are situated well below that flight path. So these are just some cross sections showing some of the other concerns that were raised at the time about the building height. And cross sections just basically take a slice through the development site, and there's a key map here showing where those slices are taken through, and you're just looking at what it would look like in a profile. So we picked up 17 Salter here. We showed the 3 little stacked townhouse unit, or there's 6 units in the stacked townhouses shown here, and then you see the proposed 9-story building in this version here, just to give you a sense of the scale of things, how things relate to one another. And I also show the same cross-section, or different cross-section CD, which goes through 11 Salter, shows Salter Avenue over here, just to show the relationship of the buildings to the existing structures. So that just gives you an idea of that height was raised as a concern by the residents, and staff recognized, and so did the developer, recognized that when we brought it to their attention that we were concerned about the height of the 7-story building. That was a point of some discussion, and later in the current proposal, they've agreed to reduce the height of this building to 5 floors instead of 7. So the current proposal that we have before us is this one here. The applicant has revised their proposal in response to feedback from the public, the planning committee, and from staff. So the proposal now consists of a 5-story building here. This is building 2. Building 1 is now 10 floors, because when they took 2 floors off of this building, they lost some of their unit counts, so they wanted to compensate for that, so they moved it over onto this building. So we're now looking at a 10-floor building, 10-story building at the corner of Lower Truro Road and McClure's, and where the roundabout would be effectively. The developer has shifted their site plan around a little bit to allow for the conveyance of this parcel of land that the town would require for a future roundabout construction. They've included that, and they've shifted their site plan to accommodate for that. So the current proposal is a multi-unit residential development consisting of 4 buildings. There's a 10-story, 95-unit building at the intersection of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills, so that's building 1 shown here. A 5-story, 42-unit building oriented to Wynn Road, which is the one shown here. There's a 3-story, 12-unit building shown at the corner of Salter and Salter here. And there's a 3-story, 6-unit stacked townhouse over here. Surface parking lot for 22 vehicles with access off of Salter. The buildings would share a common underground parking garage with 2 levels, would have access ramp from Wynn Road, so it would be located over here. And there would be a 2-level parking garage with parking for approximately 176 vehicles. So these are some renderings showing the proposed design of the development. So note the change in materials. So there's been some refinements to the design by the architect. So again, you find it amusing last time, but there's some effort being made here by the applicant, the architect, to break up the facade of the structure to minimize the impact of scale. So the highest building is situated at the corner of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills, away from the neighborhood, made up of Salter, Wynn, and Lower Truro Road. And this is just a view of the site here looking at the development from the intersection of Lower Truro Road and Wynn Road looking south. Here's another view of the subject properties or the proposed development, showing how the building steps up from the low-density development on Salter and Wynn Road to the 5-story building here, and then the 10-story building shown behind that, which would be where the roundabout or the current intersection of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills is situated. You can see the 3-story, 12-unit structure over here. Not shown in these renderings are the stacked townhouses, which would be behind here. So this is just showing an idealized view of the site. So no accurate details of the current structures on Salter here, obviously. And yeah. So here's another rendering prepared, which again it shows sort of the idea of what's around it. It's not an accurate depiction of what's currently surrounding the site, but it is an accurate depiction of what's being proposed, showing the stacked townhouses here, so the 6 units that would be located here, the 3-story, 12-unit building located here. This would be Salter here, the end of Salter. This would be, that would be Lower Truro Road. No, that would be Wynn Road there, and then Lower Truro Road, which kind of gets cut off, would be over in this area. So it's just giving you a general view of what the buildings would look like. Do not look at this for an accurate depiction of necessarily what's around the site. But just to orient yourself, over here would be the area where the proposed roundabout would be, or the intersection of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills. In terms of unit counts, so we're still looking at 155 units. There would be 83 one-bedroom units and 72 two-bedroom units. Covers about 43% of the lot. About 65% of the site would be impermeable surface. Density is about 250 units per hectare, or about 100 units per acre. Parking, there's parking for 198 vehicles. So again, that's surface parking for 22 vehicles, plus below-grade parking with 2 levels for 176 vehicles. If this was subject to the normal zone requirements, the parking requirement would be around 100 spaces, so it has sufficient parking. Parking ratio is about 1.28 spaces per dwelling unit. Amenity space, the balconies will provide about 10,000 square feet of amenity space, and there is about 2,000 square feet of interior amenity space. And there's about 3,500 square feet of dedicated amenity space at grade. There's a central common area at the middle of the development, open outdoor green space. So these are 2 policies that I mentioned earlier. So in terms of the policy review and analysis, this is where things get a little dry, so please bear with me. But I'm not going to read these policies, but those are the 2 policies for anyone who's interested. Policy UG 35 and policy IM 11. Those are the 2 policies in the town's planning documents that allow council to consider this application by development agreement. So in terms of a summary of the key issues and policy considerations, so staff have reviewed the proposal based on the town's policies. Proposal aligns with many of the town's policies, including increased residential densities on existing infrastructure. So we were trying to encourage more intensive use of our existing infrastructure, so intensification versus sprawl. So we want to as much as possible for a variety of reasons, environmental reasons, but economic reasons as well, to make sure that we don't continue to sprawl out into undeveloped areas. Instead, we try and concentrate development in existing serviced areas. Walkable neighborhoods is another policy consideration, and then creation of new housing options is another one. Potential issues include the building height, as we discussed, land use compatibility, neighborhood integrity, which is just a way of saying we have an intact, stable residential area. We want to make sure that new development doesn't damage that. We want to make sure that the neighborhoods remain intact and stable. We also have a need for a stormwater management plan, and we have the need for a traffic impact statement, which has been addressed. So in terms of height, proposal includes buildings that are 5 to 10 stories high, which could negatively impact surrounding homes. 10-story building, building 1, is not expected to create any significant compatibility issues because it is located on the edge of the surrounding residential neighborhoods, where it will have minimal impact on neighboring homes and neighborhood integrity. It is well separated from nearby homes. It's about 106 feet from the nearest dwelling at 17 Salter, 156 feet from 435 Lower Truro Road, and 185 feet from 19 James Street. The urban growth zone typically limits the height of buildings to about 0.75 times the height, the setback from the urban corridor zone. The proposal has a couple of issues with that, and I'll talk about that in a second. The building is separated from nearby homes by lower buildings that are 5 and 3 stories in height as well. So the other buildings actually do help provide a buffer between the higher buildings and the lower buildings, the lower residential area, lower density residential areas to the west. So this is just some cross sections again showing the revised proposal and what it looks like in relation to surrounding buildings. So you can see this one used to be a 7-story structure, and you can see this podium that I referred to where you have 4 floors and then the upper floors step back a tiny little bit. That happens on the larger building as the 10-story building as well. So this would be 11 Salter shown here and 17 Salter shown here with the 3-story townhouse buildings there. So just a little further on height. So the 5-story building, which is building 2, is situated about 47 feet from the general residential zone, and it's about 3 meters or about 10 feet from the abutting property in the urban corridor zone, which is 11 Salter. Urban growth zone does not permit buildings to exceed 4 stories within 72 feet of the GR zone, but the design of the building 2 helps address some of these issues. It is just the last 20 feet of the 5th floor of building 2 that exceeds the urban growth zone height limit. Building 2 is approximately 1 meter, as I said, 3.3 feet lower as well. There's a bit of a grade separation there than 11 Salter, and it features step back 5th floor, both of which help minimize the impact of the building's height. There are no balconies on the side of the 5-story building facing the homes on Salter as well, and the proposal design features that 4-story podium to help reduce the visual impact of the building's scale. So these are just some cross-sections showing some of the areas of concern in terms of adherence to the as-of-right requirements. These are requirements that council takes into consideration when they evaluate a proposal. They're not bound by them, but they can consider them. So in this case, when you look at 17 Salter, the 10-story building does infringe on what would normally be the view plane, which establishes the height requirements that we have for the urban growth zone. So there's the upper 3 floors do impose upon that somewhat. And then for 11 Salter, there is also the upper floor slightly going into that. Yeah. So shadow study was another, pardon me for 1 second. So shadow study was another thing that was requested or raised as an issue. So this was submitted by the applicant earlier today. So just a summary of some, and again, like key issues and considerations was a shadow study. So what we've done here, what the applicant's done is they've created 3 drawings showing the shadows being cast by the buildings on the spring and fall equinox, vernal and autumnal equinox. This is like the average situation. So this would be your March 21st, September 21st. So yes, in the winter there's more shadow, and yes, in the summer there is less shadow, but this is the average sort of situation. So this would be the morning on the spring or fall equinox. showing where the shadow would be cast. So this is your worst case scenario in this development situation, because what you're seeing is you're getting some impact here on the properties on Salter, pretty minor into their backyard. But most of the development is impacted, most of the shadow being cast is by the 10-story building here, which is mostly internalized to the site. So it's not as big an impact. When you get to the noon at the same time of year, the March 21st, September 21st, most of your shadow is being cast on the adjacent street. So not a huge impact there. Some impact across on the property on the other side of Lower Truro Road. That would be 427 Lower Truro Road, so some impact there. And then you see the evening on the spring and fall equinox. So again, the March 21st, September 21st. Again, because of the placement of the buildings, most of the impact here is going to be on the roundabout or the proposed roundabout, not on any other adjacent residential structures. So neighborhood integrity was another potential concern that was discussed in the town's policies. So while the proposed residential development is more intensive than the surrounding neighborhood, it is noted that the proposal is situated on the edge of the neighborhoods on a busy arterial road. Also, the intensity of the use is largely focused on the adjacent sections of Lower Truro Road, Wynn Road, and the intersection of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills Road. So it's not really going to have an impact in terms of neighborhood integrity because it's on the edge of those neighborhood, on the adjacent neighborhoods, and where it actually it's having most of its focus or most of the activity with the comings and goings through the underground parking garage are going to be on the lower section of Lower Truro Road, Wynn Road, in that area. So it's not going to be having traffic flowing through the adjacent neighborhood, except for the surface parking for the 22 vehicles. These subject properties are very much dominated by the traffic and activity along McClure's Mills Road, and they do feel quite removed when you visit the site from the surrounding neighborhoods. Development of these lands is not expected to impact the integrity of the surrounding neighborhoods. So land use compatibility. Residential uses, even relatively intensive multi-unit residential developments, do not tend to create land use conflicts with other residential developments, provided you deal with things like lighting and traffic. So the development's location on the periphery of the established residential neighborhoods does help minimize some of these incompatibility issues. Most of the activity associated with the use is largely internalized to the development, and the primary vehicle access is situated on Wynn Road, away from neighboring homes. So traffic was the other point of discussion, point of potential concern, very real concern. There is a recognized traffic issue at the intersection of Lower Truro Road, and that should say McClure's Mills Road, pardon me. To address this issue and assess the ability of the area's street network to handle the proposed development, the applicant has undertaken a traffic impact study. The traffic impact study concluded that the development is expected to generate approximately 60 vehicle trips during the AM and PM peak hours. Town's traffic authority considers this to be a modest increase in traffic, and he is here and he will discuss this briefly in a few minutes. The addition of traffic generated by the proposed development will lead to further deterioration of the existing background deficiencies present at the intersection of McClure's Mills and Lower Truro Road. Development is not, however, expected to trigger any new operational issues in the area. So the town's traffic authority is instead recommending that the town consider constructing a roundabout at McClure's Mills and Lower Truro Road intersection. And while there are operational deficiencies in the street network, these issues are pre-existing, so not caused by this development. The development is expected to lead to further delays at the intersection of McClure's Mills Road and Lower Truro Road, and solutions to the traffic issues have been identified, but these will require significant infrastructure costs to implement. So that'll be a consideration for town council. The applicant has offered to provide lands required for the construction of the roundabout. To improve the road pedestrian network in the vicinity of the proposal, the applicant is proposing to construct a new sidewalk along the east side of Salter Avenue and the south side of Wynn Road, creating a pedestrian connection between the southern site access and Wynn Road. Additionally, the Wynn Road approach to the Lower Truro Road and Wynn Road intersection will be realigned during the site's development to improve safety at this intersection. So basically take out some of the ability to travel through that intersection at higher speeds. Review by other departments. So on May 12th of this month, or earlier this month, several other departments and external agencies were forwarded details of this proposal, and they were invited to provide comments and concerns. Most of them have responded, and comments were favorable, aside from the Traffic Authority and the Chief of Police, who are both noted their concerns regarding traffic, so that has been addressed as part of the traffic impact study. The Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture noted that recreation facilities are limited in the area, which I'm sure is a surprise to no one in the room, and that the development should include sufficient amenity space for its residents. And the developer has included that green space on site and also included interior amenity space for tenants and also included balconies for each of the units. The town engineer has requested that the applicant provide a stormwater management plan as well. So in terms of public participation, what we've done, we put the development application signs were posted on the subject lands. I know they came down, but we did put them up for a second time. Information was posted on the town's website under active development applications, and it was updated throughout the application process. We did send a mail out to 71 property owners, more than one mail out actually, within 150 meters of the subject lands in March 2026. And we did 2 public information meetings, or those were conducted by the developer on March 25th, 2026. That was the morning, there was one morning and one evening session. So these are the survey results as of May 12th, 2026, showing that 66 of the responses were opposed, for 74.2% opposed, 23 or 25.8% were in favor, and then there's no opinion, no comments, 0 for each of those. So just in terms of next steps, as I mentioned, so we're at the 5-step process. We are currently at step 3. The next step is step 4, which is that public hearing of council and a decision by council. And at that point, there'll be, again, presentation by staff and a final staff report as well. And there can continue to be refinements or revisions to the development proposal between this meeting and it going to council as well, based on feedback from today's meeting. So at today's meeting, PAC members are expected to make the recommendation to council. The recommendation may include conditions or be subject to the submission of additional information. The application is expected to proceed to a public hearing tentatively scheduled for July 6, 2026. But that really is dependent on what happens today and would also be dependent on council setting that hearing date. So the recommendation from staff is to approve with conditions, and the recommendation is that council approve the application by WM Fairs Architects to enter into a development agreement with the town to permit a 155-unit residential development on lands at the corner of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills Road, as described in the staff report, provided the developer, prior to the town entering into the agreement, submits a stormwater management plan for the proposed development that has been approved by the town engineer's office, and conveys to the town that portion of 450 Lower Truro Road, PID number there, required to permit the construction of the roundabout at the intersection of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills Road. And that concludes my presentation, but I just wanted to remind the committee that the traffic authority is available to just give a brief overview of the traffic impact study that was completed.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. And I think we will ask Mr. Bent if you wouldn't mind speaking now with respect to that traffic impact statement, just to provide everybody with a bit more information, as that does seem to be an important part of this project.
Yep.
So I'll just, I don't know if I've ever tried your microphone. Let me see if that works.
I think it's. Oh,
Sorry, try.
I think it.
Is it working? Oh, okay, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So we completed a review of the traffic impact study for the proposed development on Wynn Road and Salter Avenue. The study evaluated how much traffic the development will generate, how it interacts with the existing road network, and whether any mitigation measures are needed to maintain safe and efficient operations. Yeah. The key takeaway from the review is the development is expected to generate approximately 6 vehicles during peak hours. This is considered a relatively modest increase in traffic, and the development does not create new operational failures in the road network. However, there is an existing issue at the intersection of McClure's Mills Connector and Lower Truro Road. Specifically, left turns from Lower Truro Road are already operating at an unacceptable level and are expected to worsen. This is primarily an existing infrastructure constraint, not something caused by the development. Looking at the network more broadly, most intersections will continue to operate at acceptable levels of service, generally in the A to C range. The main concern is isolated to the southbound left turn from Lower Truro Road, where queues exceed available storage and delays are high. There are also minor queuing concerns at McClure's Mills and Abenaki Wade Road, but these remain within manageable limits. Several potential mitigation strategies were reviewed in the study, and I will summarize the 3 key options. The first option is traffic signals, which has advantages. They provide controlled opportunities for left-turn movements, and they can balance competing traffic flows. The disadvantages are it would increase queuing on McClure's Mills connector, and queues would likely extend back into the Willow Street roundabout, and this creates a higher safety risk than the existing condition. Traffic signals are not recommended at this location due to the risk of spillback and network impacts. The second option is a roundabout. A roundabout has the advantages that it can improve traffic flow and reduce delays, reduce the severity of collisions compared to signalized intersections. The disadvantages, however, requires larger physical footprint than the existing intersection, would likely require impacts to adjacent private properties, and is challenging to retrofit within the current constraints. While operationally beneficial, a roundabout would require property acquisition and funding. The third option were turn restrictions. The advantages of the turn restrictions are that it eliminates the problematic left turn movement, it reduces delay, and improves safety at the intersection. It would be very straightforward and cost-effective to implement. The disadvantages, however, are that it limits access for drivers, requires vehicles to use alternate routes, and it can shift traffic to nearby intersections. In conclusion, turn restrictions would be the most practical way to address the issue at this intersection, but they do involve trade-offs in access and travel patterns. In summary, the development introduces a modest increase in traffic, it does not create new failures in the road network, and it highlights an existing constraint at the Lower Truro Road intersection that will continue to require attention over time. We need to consider how best to address this intersection in the long term. From a purely operational perspective, the roundabout would provide the most effective overall solution, as it would reduce delays and improve traffic flow. However, due to land requirements and associated costs, it may not be feasible within a reasonable time frame.
Thank you, Mr. Bent. Maybe just for the benefit of the committee, can you speak to, or Mr. Fox, maybe you can, part of the recommendation, the language in the motion is that the project be approved for development agreement subject to the stormwater management, but also subject to the fact that the developer convey a portion of land, which obviously is, what we're addressing here. But how can we, as well as the community members, be assured that the traffic issue will be addressed? That will be carried forward, that the roundabout will be constructed in a reasonable time, and those sorts of things.
Honestly, you cannot. The reason being, it's ultimately a budget decision of council, and the council's going to have to take into consideration whether or not they can reasonably afford this in the foreseeable future, with or without this development. And there is a policy in the town's planning documents that does speak to the fact that if council feels that a development exceeds their ability to financially support or do the necessary infrastructure upgrades, then that is a basis for a refusal. So council does have that option. But there is no way to guarantee, other than it's town council is going to have to, if they commit to this, then then I would be assuming that council is going to commit to undertaking the project in a reasonable time frame.
Okay, thank you. That helps. So I guess just to clarify that, council could use it as a reason to reject the proposal, but it isn't necessarily by approving the project. Council isn't necessarily saying that the roundabout will be done immediately. They may put it off for a period of time, and so that is a possibility.
I would suspect that's correct, but I would suspect at the very least that council would time the construction of any roundabout at this location to the construction of this development or other developments in the area.
Yeah, just for efficiency purposes, if for nothing else. Okay, thank you, that's helpful. Okay, just sort of speaking to everybody here, we have our committee members here who typically will now take the opportunity to ask questions, both of Mr. Fox as well as anybody here representing the developer. Mr. Sala, you have been here before previously. If you're willing, or I don't know if anyone else wishes to, but you might be the right one to come down and sit at the microphone. And then after the committee has had its opportunity to ask questions, we will allow for comments from the gallery. While the committee is asking its questions, and certainly while the developer is speaking, I would ask that everybody in the room be respectful. And I understand that these types of situations can be stressful, but I think it's really important that we're respectful with one another and that we keep this space as one where, things like applause are really kept to a minimum, if at all. So it's fine. I understand, we're all probably feeling that our emotions are a bit heightened, but let's, again, try to keep that to a minimum. And also, when it does come for the time for people to speak, I would remind you, if your point has been addressed or somebody else has raised it, just in the interests of time, maybe just sit back and know that comment has been put forward. And ideally, if there is one or two people who have already gathered the concerns of the group and they are willing to speak on behalf of the group, that would be really helpful for our purposes. So at this point, I will turn the microphone over to Councillor Graham.
Mike, I have two questions. One is for Mr. Bent, the other for our developer. I'll start with Mr. Bent. I'm not great at math, nor am I a traffic engineer, so feel free to correct me if my math is wrong. But when you did the traffic study, I think it would be important that as part of the math, the James Street application, which has, I understand, taken out their development permits, and development is going to happen there. At this time, they are forecasting 79 dwellings. If I apply the same math that you used for the James Street development, there's going to be an increase of about 38%-ish of traffic based on the 155 units that are going to be that are proposed for the Lower Truro Road, and that gave us 60 more vehicles at peak hours. Just considering the Lower Truro Road development, if we applied the same math to the James Street development, and if I'm correct, I believe that would add 26 more cars. So at that intersection, would we not be looking more realistically at an 86 more vehicles at peak hours? I also appreciate that some of the cars that would be leaving the James Street development may use the Abenaki Road to exit. However, that may just be moving a problem along to another part of town. So I think that we need to consider that when we're looking at the traffic study, or maybe you have already, or maybe my math isn't correct, but I'd like your feedback.
Yeah, so if you're looking at I don't have the James Street traffic study here, but that would make sense to me that you would definitely see an increase, and that amount of increase doesn't seem unreasonable. So if you looked at both developments together, but also there could be other developments in other areas that could also increase it. When this traffic study was done, it took into account a 10-year future growth. So it does account for some growth in that number. But you would see, yes, you would see some growth. I still wouldn't account it more than a modest increase in traffic, though.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
My second question is for the developer. Could you expand on your ideas around the amenity space in the area? What you intend to provide? I'm wondering, are you, as a follow-up to that, will there be, who do you expect the clients or the tenants of your building to be? Strictly adults or families, or what do you expect, or what do you envision? And how will the amenity space accommodate those new residents?
Sorry, I'm off my game today. Here we go. There you
Good.
go.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So we expect a cross range of demographics to live in the building. People that are downsizing, senior citizens that are downsizing from homes that want a newer product. That could be one. People that have maybe contract with the hospital, working on a contract basis, nurses, doctors that would live there. And it could have families as well. So that's as far as the unit, and that's why we see a cross range of unit types and unit sizes throughout the development. As far as the amenity spaces are very critical, we're finding, with new buildings of this nature, because you're creating a new community. People are living in these buildings, and it forms an environment. Some people come as friends and live there. Some senior citizens come and they live there. So we have our amenity rooms inside and outside. They interact with one another. From inside, we have a gym is a must right now. So we have and we're not talking gym like with a couple machines. We're talking a full-blown gym with multiple machines and different various machines that cater to not only the young but also specific for elderly. We also have social rooms. They're very important. We have cards rooms. We have social rooms where if somebody wants to have, they want to have like a small gathering, like I said, baptism, birthday parties, celebration. So these spaces are very important because they end up bringing the people that are within the building together, and they're well managed too. You have to book them, and so they can get the maximum use of these spaces. We do have a healthy size of amenity spaces in this building. We're also considering having a rooftop amenity as well. So there's spaces in the building, there's spaces on the rooftop, and we have outside spaces as well, right? And the space that we have is sufficient for the number of units that we have.
Do you think that the space would accommodate play space for children?
It could, yes. The space outside that's in the courtyard that could have children's play equipment, yes. Yeah.
Could or would?
Would.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And that could be written in the development agreement. If that is something that is critical to, we could write these things in the development agreement. So it's not a question that it's a question, if it's written in the agreement, then it's part of the approval process.
Thank you. Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Fox, for your presentation, and Mr. Sala for being here. Let's start with the helipad flight path. This is just out of curiosity. How tall would the building have to be to interfere? Just out of curiosity, do we have that number? I know it's well below, but I'm just curious if you did the math on that.
I don't have the number right off, but where is that graphic? I think we could
40.
probably roughly estimate.
40 stories.
It would have to be significant, correct?
Yeah, that's
That
a
is-
9-story building,
that's the
so
9?
you're looking at,
30,
four times
40?
that height.
Yeah. Okay. Just curious for, any other additions. More of a curiosity point than anything else. But we do have concerns with the building and the added height. Mr. Fox, can we take a look at any of the ones that show the outside drawings, what it would potentially look like? That would do lovely, thank you. What building materials are we using here? Is this going to be a completely concrete building? Is this going to be a concrete base with stick on top? Do we have those details yet?
This would be a reinforced concrete building.
Building?
Yes.
Okay.
Both buildings, yes.
Both buildings fully reinforced
Yeah.
concrete.
The
Excellent.
3-story structures would be wood frame. The townhouses and the 12-unit 3-story building would be wood frame.
Okay. Also have some concerns with the with some of the renderings that we've had here and the inaccurate depiction of the surrounding area. It's really hard to envision how this would look in the existing area when we've got some sort of, I don't know, weird AI slop, if you'll pardon me for being so blunt. But I mean, Lower Truro Road just disappears into some farmland that I'm pretty sure does not exist at that site. I would really love, when, you know, if this is coming to council, I'd love to see some updated renderings that show a truer picture so that the public hearing has a better idea of what's actually there.
That's very doable. Consider it done. It's just this process evolves. We get comments, and it continues to evolve. As you can appreciate, the footprints of buildings are changing, the location of the buildings are changing, the height is changing, the form is changing, in response to things that we hear from staff, things that we hear from PAC meeting that last, and things that we're hearing also from the engineering department. The roundabout idea is very fresh still, so we had to make quick adjustments before we came to you to show you what the impact of that would be. Yeah, but definitely, if that is of a benefit to the council and the community, we would have a realistic rendering to show as part of our presentation at the next community council.
I'm fairly sure I do not speak only for myself when I say that realism would be very beneficial for community and council. You mentioned briefly that there could be some additional amenity space on the rooftop, because I was going to ask if there was going to be any plans for solar installation, some rooftop gardening. Is that going to be used for your stormwater management plan? Because in the drawings I just saw, a flat roof that looks like it's going to collect snow and be a problem. Maybe not for reinforced concrete, but I mean, snow, the weight of snow does add up. What are we planning for that? Because again, I know things have changed a lot, but also we're getting very close to the public hearing potentially. So,
yeah, and you are correct. I mean, that level of detail is not there yet, but we are anticipating or working on some interior and exterior amenity space on the rooftop. So what we'll do is we'll probably put some more detail towards that. So we're looking at a combination of indoor and outdoor amenity on the rooftop that it's stepped in from all sides, so you basically cannot see it within the height, but it would be for the benefit of the residents. So we will when it comes to stormwater management on the rooftop and what have you, those usually are done when we move into detailed drawings. But on the conceptual phase, we could actually bring some details to the next next council meeting. On a
again,
concept level.
we're looking at, I think Mr. Fox had said potentially early July for a public hearing. That's going to come quickly. I would suggest we be as prepared as possible with as realistic and detailed as possible.
No issues. From the renderings point of view, to this point, it's been focused more on the building articulation. At the next public hearing, we'll have more refined renderings.
Okay. Now you mentioned setting back the rooftop amenity, and has it been considered to reverse the setback of the buildings? Mr. Fox, would you be so kind? Could we get the view plane graphic that you had? I'm not sure where that is. I'm sorry. There was
right here.
There was a cross section that showed the view plane of the buildings that had the line drawing through with the sort of the building in red, sort of that would impact the view plane. That would be the one. Yes, thank you. Looking at these, I see that per sort of normal circumstance, the building setbacks are away from the road to, sort of alleviate some of the, I guess, shock of how big it is, try to reduce that size. Has it been considered, and this can be for staff or the developer, reversing that? The roadway is a busy roadway, it's a busy arterial. It really seems like the bigger impact is going to be to the residents on the other side. Have we considered shifting that back? It would probably completely eliminate the viewpoint issue there for 11 Salter on our C to D cross section. It's certainly not going to fully eliminate, on the higher building, but it would certainly reduce. Is that possible or has been considered?
I think that will create other issues. It hasn't. We can look at it. I'm concerned that it might create an issue at the street wall facing the street. So it's a balancing act. We can look at it before. It just the way this is at the top corner, I think the impact is very minimal. I don't want to create another issue by solving one, but we can look at it to see if we reverse the step back from the street to the inside courtyard, whether that would yield better results.
I would appreciate that as an option. Which then, Mr. Fox, I wonder, do you have the information? I know we talk here on this particular graphic that this would be sort of the as of right height requirements that these two buildings would exceed. Do we actually have a list of the land use bylaws that are not met by the development and how much they miss by, I guess?
I do touch on some of those in the body of the report. I don't have those right at hand, so I don't have that list right in front of me. But in the body, in the Schedule A of the report, it would detail any points where there's a discrepancy between the as-of-right requirements and what's being proposed.
Okay, yes, because I've read that through
It's
the
also
body.
a little confused in the report because it's not clear. There's multiple zones in question here, and there's different policies being used, so it's really unclear as to which zone you would actually use to create that baseline. So it would be the urban growth or the urban corridor. So yeah, I do discuss that quite in detail in the report, but I don't have the numbers broken down right in front of me.
Yeah, it is a very lengthy report, and I noted some as I was going through, but I think it might be useful to sort of have them all in one place, because especially if we knew how much we're missing by, because in the case, again, on the bottom graphic there, I mean, that might be, you know, that's a small amount that it misses the as of right by. It'd be easier to forgive that than say the one on the top. So it would be useful, if possible, and if the committee agrees, pardon me, to have that sort of gathered into one spot. You mentioned possible tenants, people who are downsizing, people, you know, working at the hospital. Certainly in the survey results, there were a lot of folks who mentioned that they work in healthcare and how amazing it would be to live in this building so close to their work, you know, especially. But when we're talking about who's going to live there, we also have to talk about, is this affordable? Council is always very concerned about affordability. One of the things I hear from a lot of my constituents is that they would love to downsize. They can't find somewhere to downsize to that's actually going to be affordable for them, especially, you know, seniors around fixed incomes. It's a struggle for them. Where are they going to live? What steps are you taking with CMHC or other government agencies that are going to help address affordability at this, development?
It is really early in the process, so typically the discussions and dialogue with CMHC happens after a project is approved. So my understanding from our client that he intends to have affordable housing program with CMHC that gives them the advantage of financing, better financing, which comes, you know, it can be satisfied in different categories. I don't have that information at this point. I don't want it's us as planners and designers, we don't get involved in that component at this time. If I'm happy to have another dialogue with the client before the public hearing as well to add more to that. What I can say to you right now is this form of housing is we're creating a wide range of type of units and size of units. This will present more volume of housing and diverse housing because we have the stackable townhouses. We have a building of 12 units that has larger units but smaller number of units. So we're proposing a range of ones, twos, and threes, some one and dens as well, ranging from 600 square feet to 1,600 square feet per unit, and that provides just a wide range of housing prices to the marketplace. Yeah.
Yeah, affordability is certainly a concern of council, as I've said already. Any additional information you can bring to the public hearing would be appreciated. I know the focus here has mostly been on traffic this evening, but affordability is going to be an absolute key in any development going forward. And on that, I have asked this before, but I am going to ask it again, even though I know what the answer is. Are there going to be any units available for purchase anywhere at this development?
Not that I know of.
Right. I will get on my soapbox very briefly to say that I think ownership opportunities in the town are dwindling, and I would love to see developments come forward. And again, this is Councillor McGrath speaking, not the committee speaking. The committee are welcome to make their own comments on the subject. But I think the ownership opportunities in the town are dwindling, and I don't think that's great for our community. I would love to see more ownership opportunity. Thank you.
It most likely would be for the townhouses and maybe the 12-unit building, not for the multi-unit residential buildings, not that I know of.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McGrath. Deputy Mayor Thomas.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, I'll start with something positive. I always like to start with something positive. Sometimes you can start with something positive. Sometimes you can end with something positive. I'm going to start with something positive. I think the design is delightful. I really like the cornices. I think it's an excellent design. But you know, and I've stated right from the beginning that I've had a problem with this when it comes to height. I think it's too high for the area. This is a lovely, stable neighborhood with, you know, 1.5 story buildings. And putting this there, I don't think is appropriate. So I've made that very clear from day one. This is not a surprise. I've made it very clear, but I do have some questions. One is, when it comes, Mr. Fox, if we could just take a look at, oh no, first of all, my first question has to do with the shadow. We've shown the spring and summer equinox, which is fair, but I would also like, when it comes to, goes before council, I like to know what the shadow is in winter solstice, because our winters are long, and that's when the greatest shadow will be, and I'd love to know what that shadow is on properties, you know, December 21st, you know, at winter solstice. I'd like to know that. So that's one thing. Number two, if we look at page 3, Mr. Fox, if you could look at page 3, please, of your handout. And if you look at page 3, this here involves these two maps here, the zone and also the policy map.
Yeah.
Zone and policy map. So if we look at that and we see that it's actually zoned, as you know, urban corridor, but the policy is urban growth. And the reason, and you could tell us the reason for that if you would. Tell us the reason why it's zoned urban corridor, but the policy is urban growth.
Policy area respect is intended to set out what council's intent is for the long term. So what they want to see happen there over the course of the plan. So it doesn't reflect what's currently on the ground. So what we kind of want to see without having council oversight. So the urban corridor zone is the pink zone there. That's set in place because what we want to see happen is if you want to do as of right development, you can do what's permitted in the urban core zone now. You don't have to go through council. So that was something that council agreed to and said, we're comfortable with that level of development without having our oversight. There's no special relaxation of any requirements required. It's just you go ahead and do what's allowed in the urban corridor zone. That's what's applied to the property because that's what council was comfortable with. The urban corridor zone also gives the neighboring property owners a level of protection because you can consider there's just a limit on certain things like certain intensity, certain height of the building for as of right development. So when you wanted to get into higher buildings, we put the urban growth policy area there because that allows you to look at things like development agreements for higher buildings so you can take into consideration things like design and buffering and landscaping and where the driveway access is going to be and that sort of thing. So it's just a way of providing the developer with the option to do more, but having to go to this committee and to council to get permissions to do so based on design trade-offs and negotiated process where we look at what sorts of things they're offering and what sorts of design features are here that are good enough to warrant a relaxation of requirements. So it's not, the urban corridor zone is just basically what's there, reflecting what's kind of there now and what we're prepared to allow for without going through a special approval process.
Right. And what interests me was, if you look at the policy area map, part of what was urban corridor is put into general residential area. And half, I would suggest, and I don't know, but I think half of building 2 would be in the policy area of general residency. And so why was that not all put into urban growth? I see it as a buffer. I would see that as a buffer. Is that, because I went through these policies very closely, and, you know, so I'm aware of the fact that urban growth does not cover the whole urban corridor, that there's a portion of it that is in policy is general residential in order to buffer that area. Is that correct, or is my logic incorrect?
There's no discussion about a buffer in any of the town council's policies. But
I know, but you can see, though, it's interesting. Okay, I'll just point it out that it's interesting that what is urban corridor in the west side of that urban corridor along Wynn Road under policy goes from urban corridor to general residential. Because it's important in this sense is that, you know, the building stated in your report is 14.3 meters. This is building 2, is 14.3 meters from the general residential zone. And so it really doesn't even meet the criteria as of right for 4 stories. So it should be 3 stories as of right. And it's been asked to be 5 stories. So that's a point that of concern for me. Can we turn to the height cross-section that was mentioned by Mr. McGrath? Yeah, I don't see, well, where is it? It's coming along here someplace. Is that it there with the red line, that red line? And yeah, here. The one that's of real concern is the 10-story building, and I see it really posing a problem only for within the development itself, for the townhouses. So I don't think that that's such an issue. So I don't think you need to move that, because I don't see that as imposing upon any of the existing buildings in the neighborhood. It's really only affecting, you know, the townhouses within the development. So I don't see that as a concern. So I'll say that. And I just want to say that I don't know the distance from, it was mentioned, Mr. Fox, you said it was the 10-story or building number 1 was 24.6 meters from the closest general residential building. But I'd like to know how close it is to a property. If you look at the height under 10 stories, I think it's a slide prior to the one that we're looking at. No, I guess not. You went through the 10-story heights. And I think you said, yeah, 24.6 from the nearest dwelling. And, but we don't do it from the nearest dwelling. We do it from the nearest zone or property. So I'd like to know that, how close it is. Because to get up to 8 stories, it should be 35.2 meters. And here it is 24.6 from a building, not the property. So I'd like to know what that is as well. And then my last comment has to do with the roundabout. The roundabout, we don't know, but the roundabout, roughly, we were told, is about $2.5 to $3 million to build that roundabout. And so I'm concerned about that because as a councillor, I want to see a list of capital priorities and know where we're spending our money and where we need to spend the money. And this takes, because I don't, and I know the report, and I'm not a traffic person, so I have really no grounds to stand on with this. But I believe that 60 more cars or vehicles at peak periods, because I use that intersection, and it's impossible to get out of. And if you told me there's another 60, 30 more an hour coming out of there, I just can't see it. So I know I'm not I know nothing about it, by the way, but common sense tells me that that really aggravates it. And so I think for this project to go ahead, it needs this roundabout. It needs a traffic solution. And the traffic solution being proposed to us is a roundabout. And the roundabout is very costly. And I'm not saying that I won't vote for a roundabout. And that if this building goes ahead, vote for the roundabout. However, I want to know where else we need to spend our money in up to $3 million. There's lots of roads that need paving, yada, yada. The list goes on and on and on and on of need, right? And so this wasn't even on my radar as a concern last week. And now, since the traffic study, it's now front and center. So that concerns me. Just being honest with you, right? It's a good policy always to be honest with people. So anyways, that's where I'm at. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I guess some members of the committee who aren't counselors should speak, just so we're not repeating only what you guys get to say in the future. I hear the concerns. I am not of the opinion that simply because something is high that it should not be approved. And I'm not saying that anybody is taking a view that's that simplistic, but in my opinion, that's just not something that is necessarily a non-starter for me. I appreciate the location of the development, which obviously for many of the people here, they would disagree. But, we've approved a lot of developments on the up at the top of Yonge Street and in areas that, we're destroying habitat, we're sprawling to the outskirts of the town. We're stretching infrastructure. You want to talk about costs. Those are where they get really, really significant. So in my opinion, to have a development that is so close to so many amenities, obviously not the amenities of the building, but, the hospital, the rec, the Wade Road stores, it's really, in my opinion, one of the most important things that this committee should consider. And I get that traffic may increase, but I think we're going to have to make a decision of whether we want development or not. And I think council has made the decision that this is an area that should be developed just by the fact that it zoned it in that manner. So I think the developer has done a lot of work to make the development fit into the neighborhood as much as possible. I think many people probably didn't appreciate, but the changes that they're making to the entrance and exit of the building to address traffic concerns that you all have, I think is really decisions that they're making in good faith. I think the roundabout will be beneficial for the entire town. I think the roundabout the two that we've already seen put in our area have been really helpful. I think the parking, the fact that it's, most of it is underground, and then the above ground parking is, again, as they've made the development such that it impacts the community as little as possible, of course, knowing that it will have an impact, because any development will. Hopefully some of you who love this neighborhood might consider this to be a place where you could live. So I think it can be hard to think of it that way, but you may want to move to a building like this that has an elevator and a gym. And anyway, I won't push that point. But in my opinion, I think the development really does have some really really good features. And when I drive down that way towards the rec or the hospital, to me, that that area looks great. It wouldn't be something that I would suggest would be appropriate right in the heart of that neighborhood, but where it is on the outskirts, I think for me is a very important reason why it does work. So those are my opinions on it. Anyone else have any thoughts? Sarah Bell? No, nothing? Okay, well, I guess we can have people from the gallery speak. And again, just know that all of the committee members have received the written submissions, but if there is somebody who's sort of here to speak on behalf of everybody, that would be great. And so you'll receive the microphone. Please introduce yourself and please indicate where you live. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Oh, good. So my name is Robert Petch. I live at 397 Lower Truro Road. I fall within the mail out for this development. So just from listening to what was presented here, I've got 3 points and a question to make. A lot of the things that some of the people in here have asked me to, we created a list to make it a little easier, and but by no means am I speaking for everybody in this room. So first I want to address the literal elephant in the room, size. I think that's really one of our core issues here. By your own admission from the Director of Planning, you're violating your own zoning height requirements. But what we hear about that is it's okay. It's only on the edge of the community. So there's everything that was sort of a negative was kind of dismissed in that way. The shadows was another thing that was kind of discussed, and we saw that it is infringing on somebody on Lower Truro Road, and it was sort of said, well, it's just on Lower Truro Road. I know the people who live right in that spot, so that's their shadow. But really what I found was the traffic was the biggest red flag from this meeting. So the three suggestions were, put a traffic light in there. Clearly not a good idea when you have a roundabout not very far away from that. It's not a very good idea. Then we talked about the roundabout, which is clearly the best way to go. It's expensive, and it would cause, it's got a bigger footprint, that was stated. So that would require more on either the contractor or on the town. But I think if you were to ask the people behind me, that's a you problem, not an us problem, because that one solves the big problem of traffic, or at least alleviates it. I thought it very telling when the traffic study was done. And it did point out that things are bad. And it's not bad because of the development. But here's what we're going to do, and it's going to make it worse. I think that was arguably the worst defense of a situation I've ever heard, right? And then the final solution, which I love this one, was stop making people, don't allow people to make left-hand turns. That is ludicrous. And the implication for that was, well, down the road we'll look at it. I don't think anybody here is going to fall for that. So we talked a lot about the amenities of these buildings. Is there going to be a place for exercising, for kids playing? Once again, I think the people behind me don't really care that much about the amenities for people moving in there. They're caring about their own communities, right? So you're talking about building a 10-story building right up against, I believe it was said in the opening statement from your Director of Planning that it's predominantly single-family dwellings. No, it's not. It's all single-family dwellings. There might be an odd outlier. There's the retirement villa down the road, but that's nowhere near. So it is a single family, 1 story, maybe a story and a half, maybe some 2-story, but that's what we're That's what the community looks like. One of my other questions is, when you put a building of that size, and we're going back to the traffic, and you're going to dump all that traffic, I believe, Bill, you mentioned that as well, that you're going to make a bad situation even worse. That building is right up against McClure Mills. There's no time for that traffic to disperse. No time. It's right there at that intersection. So my question, and I apologize to the people who, gave me all these questions, because a lot of them were answered here. You've basically shown that you're not going to follow your own, your zoning requirements. My question is, to the people behind me, what would you tell them that this is a good idea? I've talked to a lot of the people here. Not one single person has come to me and said, I'm okay with it. Not one. So I know that you've said that this looks good and it's we need development. There's probably nobody in this room that would say we don't need more housing. You mentioned the top of Yonge Street, all kinds of big buildings there. Why don't you put one more big building there? No. Oh, okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. All right. But okay, so let's move that.
Never built up there to begin with.
Let's move it then to, we've got the Walmart, we've got the Kent, there's great big open areas there. You can put a building there. But my question to you is, what are you going to say to the people to make us say it's a good idea? Because I haven't heard one thing from this, from all of you that sells it to us, that says it's a good idea. Not one thing.
I don't know, Deputy Mayor Thomas, if you want to address that. To me, that's more of a council decision. The council had its planning revisions to the entire master plan for the town a few years ago. So that's when those discussions were had. Just to bring up your point about, us not abiding by the zoning or the policy, to be clear, if a development fell squarely within the requirements for zoning, they would not be appearing before this committee. This is the point of this committee, is to review applications where they fall outside the scope of what is allowed as of right. So just to make that very clear, that's why we're having the discussion about how, whether the impact is significant or those sorts of things. With respect to, the discussion about whether any of you will agree, it comes down to what the town has chosen to do, and the fact that I think we see many towns in Nova Scotia that are struggling significantly because they just don't have the revenue to continue to operate. And it's not a very romantic thing to say, and it's unfortunate, but I think that's what we are faced with as a mid-sized Nova Scotia town. I don't know if Deputy Mayor Thomas wants to speak to it anymore. I'm not a councillor myself, but that would be how I see it. That's what development is for, so that all of us can continue to have, a fire hall and a hospital and clean drinking water and those sorts of things. So that to me is why we have it. Yeah. And it's really challenging. I get it. When it's in your neighborhood, everybody has the same feelings, but.
No, it's not this isn't a case of not in my backyard. No. We all agree that we need, I'm sorry, I just wanted to kind of respond to that, because it's very easy to say that, we just put it somewhere, but not in my neighborhood.
In my neighborhood, in my backyard.
Nope, sorry, we'll take it away from yours.
Yeah, you see the challenge though, right?
No, I do see the challenge,
Yeah.
but I also see a lot of open space in Truro. Like I said, you've got, and I know it's, if you don't own the land there, it's kind of a moot point. But there's all that land around Walmart and Kent, that wouldn't be up against anybody's houses. And those, you did mention that you would like to see a better representation of what it looks like. I thought that was very telling. showing the picture with these massive green spaces around the building and not a house in sight. The reality is, you're gonna look out and you're gonna see those buildings, right? You're gonna be in those shadows. So an accurate representation is definitely a must. So.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we just can't let people speak without a microphone. And Mr. Deputy Mayor Thomas is just going to speak for a moment.
Yeah, the only thing I would like to add to that, and Mr. Fox is the one that really should say this, is that every zone in town, but not all zones in town, but most zones in town, and not all, I believe there's one that where you can't have a development agreement. But all these zones, you can have a development agreement. And that's a very, very important thing that council has, because as of right is very restrictive sometimes. And there's sometimes where you want to, go beyond what it is because it's best for the town. So that's one point. And so this is where we're at. And when a development agreement comes forward like this, where it goes beyond as of right, as the chair said, this is the time in which this committee is challenged with considering those changes to the bylaws to it's not a change in bylaw, but allow this building to take place in that particular zone. The other thing is this building will generate a lot of tax revenue for the town. And so I just want you to know that when it comes to before council will be considering that as well, because it's a very expensive roundabout. I just want to be honest with you. It's a very expensive roundabout, but this project could generate $400,000 in tax revenue for the town. That goes a long way to building a roundabout. So those are the considerations. It's a very complex thing to consider, when you're considering these things. So you should be aware of that. I'm not against, having development on that corner. That corner should be developed. Yeah, I believe it should be, but it can be developed really well and properly. And I don't think this is it because of the height of the building, but I do believe that it can be a very effective development that would work better with the neighborhood. That's my opinion. I'm only one counselor, and I'm only one person on this committee. I only have one vote, and so we'll see where things go. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi. Sound or not? My name's Selena Farrell. I live on Wynn Road. I have for quite a while. First thing is, I turn left onto that road, and I have done so at every hour of the day. Never had an issue. Never seen an accident there, so I don't know why it's considered dangerous. The other thing is wondering if you guys have actually talked to emergency health services regarding lifeline paths, where you want them changed. Because it looks like you've talked to the aerospace people and that, but I'm just wondering if EHS is actually being contacted and talked to about what's going on with the height of the buildings.
So with respect to the height of the buildings, a life flight, we don't contact life flight directly. I contacted the Colchester East Sands Health Authority. They have a facilities manager who's responsible for the heliport and all the helicopter activity in and out of that. So that's who I contacted, but I also contacted Transport Canada, spoke to their people, and that's where I come up with all the numbers and the flight path and determine that what's safe in terms of relative to the location of the helipad and the height of the buildings. So
Changing a path of life flight will certainly.
there's no
have some
proposal
impact.
to change the flight path. It's not changing the flight path. There is no proposal here to change it. The building is beneath the existing flight path.
Okay. That's all I've got.
Yes, my name is Susan Whitehead. I just want to make one little point. We've been talking about the height of the buildings and stuff. My concern is the number of units. You have 155 units, which my opinion consists of 155 vehicles at the very minimum. It also consists of 155 more people at a minimum. That is my concern, not necessarily the height of the building. It's the amount of people coming out of that one little spot.
My name is Murtis Guy. My husband, Wilson Guy, is here, and we live at 70A Wynn Road. We are renters, so because we are renters, we receive no notification whatsoever about this. And when I asked the question to the folks at Town Hall, I was told that if we are renters, then we don't get notified because they don't know who the renters are. My first point would be is that all it would take is dear occupant and put a letter informing us what's happening so that we know and we can participate in the process and how we feel. That's all you have to do. You don't need to keep track of who's who. So I would recommend to the town that you not create two tiers system for your citizens. We chose to live here on Wynn Road 2 years ago, and we did it for various reasons. One was the location, because it's so close to so many amenities, hospital, wellness center. If you don't go to the wellness center, you might end up at the Olive Center. So that's why we chose it. We also chose it because we can walk to the pharmacy, we can walk to all kinds of things. But more than that, we chose it because of the neighborhood. We chose it because it was quiet. Where we live, it's all, I would say, mostly, not all retired folks, but most of us are retired. So we received no notification whatsoever. So that's, I'm thinking of all the noise. I'm thinking of the disruption, never mind the noise, but the disruption on Wynn Road before, during, and after this development is done. So from the time the ground is broken on this development until the roundabout is done and until it's totally populated, it will be a nightmare for us in noise, disruption, and I have no idea how long this is going to take. I've been down this road before in other places where we have lived. And in some cases, it has taken up to 5 years. Now, by 5 years' time, I may not even be there. I may be somewhere else, but somebody will be there. So if I'm not speaking for myself, I'm speaking for whoever might be living at 70A Wynn Road. So my question to the developer is, and to the town, if the roundabout is being constructed at the same time that the development is being constructed, just think of that if you live in that neighborhood, okay? That's just a nightmare. So I don't know if the developer or the town has any dates in mind as to the duration from the time the ground is broken or the first whatever bit of concrete that you're going to make this roundabout, when it started until it's finished, because the disruption will be there the entire time during the construction. Then after this 155 units are populated, I'm assuming that all of them, when they turn out of that development, will turn onto Wynn Road. There's no other way for them to get out. They can't turn onto McClure's. So they're going to go out Wynn Road. Anybody coming down Lower Truro Road that live up in Wynn Park, they're going to encounter that traffic. Anyone on Wynn Road that lives there is also going to encounter that traffic. Whether you turn left, right, or upside down, you are still going to be caught up in that traffic. So that's the question that I would have for the developer. Do you know how long it's going to take from the time you actually break ground that first time with that shovel or backhoe or whatever you're using until it's populated with 155 units? Do you have a time frame in mind? And the second question is, will all of the traffic coming out of that development turn on Wynn Road? These are my concerns. I'm not speaking for anyone else here except myself and my husband who live at 70A Wynn Road. Thank you.
Mr. Sala, do you want to speak to a timeline? Do you have one in mind? Is this going to be a staged build?
It would be. A project of this scale typically takes around 3 years to complete from beginning of construction.
Thank you. Just to address your comments about being a renter, I am not the town solicitor, but I understand that the rules for notice fall under the Municipal Government Act. I don't expect that the town would be able to change them unilaterally. I think that would be a provincial decision with respect to an amendment to that legislation. I expect your landlord would have received notice. So maybe it's something that you might want to speak to your landlord about, providing you with any notices that they receive. That might just solve that problem. And also, that is the reason why signs are posted so that people can see them as they pass. And I believe there's also notices posted on the website. So I think the town is following all the rules under the legislation, and I think at this point in time, that'll probably remain the same unless that changes. Okay. Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to address one of the other, partly what you had said about the MGA, because I'm in agreement, renters should be receiving these notices. But the MGA is set by the province, so this is an issue for Minister Ritzy. I would bring that to his office and ask for some of those changes, because that's how that's going to happen. And I'll let you know that I'm going to speak to the minister as well on that, because I do agree that that should be done. To your other question, is the traffic going to turn onto Wynn Road? Yes, that's laid out in the plans. I think that's very clear. One of the things that I can speak on that council is looking at to address traffic is public transportation. Because one of the things that we have to look at when you say, oh, we are going to get stuck in traffic. No, we are traffic. We are all traffic when we are out there. We are all in somebody else's way. So we got to be considerate of not saying, oh, we're stuck in traffic. I don't want to come across as being like, oh, they're not allowed to drive because they're impeding my ability to drive, right? But that is somehow, that's sort of how you can see how it could sound like that, right? So one of the things we are looking at is public transit, and if you have not yet talked to Councillor Graham or Councillor Talbot, your representatives in Ward 1, about public transit, I would certainly encourage you to do so, because that is going to be the biggest way that we address congestion, is getting people out of their cars, and that's getting public transit. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, there's a meeting tomorrow for the transit at 165 Victoria.
Is that is that possibly the high-speed rail?
No, that's the one they're trying to put together all the different communities and then try to make them interconnected.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there is a gentleman with the microphone. If you could introduce yourself, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sort of.
Sort of. I'm Wayne Updegrove from Salter Avenue. My question's for anybody that can answer this. My concern is they're going down 2 stories for the parking, and that's going to be from ground level. Have they done core samples on the larger buildings to see if they're going to hit rock, and will they anticipate if they're going to have to blast or not?
Thank you for that question. Has anybody addressed that question, Mr. Sala?
Not at this early stage. And
Okay.
typically these assessments are done if and when this process gets approved, and before building design, because it informs building design, and before permitting as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in between, after this approval, during design, before building permit, is when all the technical testing is done.
Okay. And I know WM Fairs has another development in town. I don't know, because that was before my time, whether it has done any, well, I expect it would have done certainly some digging for that project. The old jailhouse? The old jail site, I believe, is at WM Fairs.
I
You
don't
were not
have that
involved? Okay.
information, yeah.
Just going to ask if
Yeah.
there was anybody who knew whether our town typically has that as an issue, because it certainly isn't something that I know much about. Okay. Can we move the microphone around?
I just have a quick question. I live on Salter Avenue at the very end. So there's only one way in and one way out of Salter. So I'm going to be stuck there when they start the construction. So what is going to be done so we can get in and out? And if it's a neighborhood of seniors, what's going to be done if we need help, an ambulance or anything? Or if I have to get out just for anything, how can I get out that road?
I will let Mr. Bent speak to that, or Mr. Fox. I expect something will be done to address that.
Yeah, well, just a couple of points. One is we do review, all development applications get reviewed by the fire service and the Truro Police Service for the access for emergency services to make sure that, that's usually speaking to after development, to make sure everything is okay. During construction, we have what's called a construction management plan that's required, and one of the things that would be specified in that would be access to the site for existing residents for emergencies.
Okay. I'm missing a member. Yeah, I'm trying to.
Hi, my name is John Spicer. I live at Wynn Park.
Thank you, Mr. Spicer. Go ahead.
I've got two items I'm a little curious about. Right now, we're talking about 60 trips per day in and out of the park for 155 buildings.
Sorry, just to clarify, it's a increase of 60 vehicle trips per hour during the peak hours in the morning, so like between 8 and 9, I think, or actually, Jared could probably
like
clarify.
For demographics, so we're talking about professionals working at the hospital, families, so there's going to probably be one family member working minimum. I think the number of 60 vehicles is probably half of what's realistically going to happen.
I think that the traffic study speaks to that.
Yeah.
So the traffic study is saying that in the peak hours, which would be 2 hours when people go to work and 2 hours when people return from work, in those 4 hours, 60 vehicles per hour will be added to the traffic of the typical traffic. Is that correct? So I think what you're saying is specifically also caught by the study.
And one last item, with the new roundabout going in, because of the proximity to the existing roundabout, will that back up traffic coming off Willow Street?
Again, I mean, the traffic study can speak to it a little better, but I think you'll, like if you go to communities that have roundabouts, you'll typically see that they really do operate in such a way that there isn't a backup because you're immediately.
Okay. To your point.
Yep.
I lived in the Middle East for 25 years. I've traveled all through Europe, roundabouts everywhere.
Yes, great.
And what they're doing is actually taking them out in areas of high volume.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
You might want to go to Stratford PEI. They just put like 8 of them in, and they're just one right after another. It works really well. Anyway, again, Mr. Bent, you might want to speak to that. I was just in England. I saw more roundabouts than I could shake a stick at. So I've not heard that they don't work, but again, I'm not a traffic authority.
Until the traffic volume reaches a certain level, and then the traffic flow begins to break down.
Okay, well, Go ahead, Mr. Bent, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if some of his question was related to delays during construction as well, the traffic control would have to encompass both roundabout areas so that it can flow properly, because you would see delays back up through the roundabout during construction, but the traffic control would have to extend its area around both so that it could make sure everything's functions properly.
Okay, okay, thanks, Mr. Laurier has returned. I'm going to ask the committee. We do have, sorry, is it a new point? It's a new question. Okay, I'll let you speak, and then we will be, I would ask the committee to prepare themselves. I will be asking for a motion. Go ahead.
My name is Karen Torval. I live at Wynn Park, 12 Wellington Court in Wynn Park. Something that has not been addressed yet is the capacity for water and sewer. A town, a city, always that is usually a top of the list. Traffic is very important, but water and sewer, the capacity to handle water flow, water pressure, the capacity for sewage, and so on. I haven't heard that addressed. Can you speak to that, please?
I'll let Mr. Bent address that as the Director of Public Works.
I'm the operations engineer. Yeah, so there's lots of capacity for water, and the sewer system can also handle in that area. There aren't any issues currently, so we don't have any expectation or any issue for alarm. There is always improvement that can be made, but there is lots of capacity for the water system.
Okay, thank you. So we do, committee, have a recommendation before us, and obviously we have a vote either to approve it or deny it. So I will just read the language from the report. And the recommendation is that council, and again, this would be our recommendation to council, that council approve the application by WM Fairs Architects to enter into a development agreement with the town to permit a 155-unit residential development on lands at the corner of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills Road as described in the staff report, provided the developer, prior to the town entering into the agreement, submits a stormwater management plan for the proposed development that has been approved by the town engineer's office, and conveys to the town that portion of 450 Lower Truro Road required to permit the construction of a roundabout at the intersection of Lower Truro Road and McClure's Mills Road. So that is the language we have before us. If anybody would like to put that forward as a motion. Okay, Ms. Laurier has made the motion. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Can't get to a vote if we don't second the motion. It doesn't mean you're in favor. It just means we're putting the motion on the table. Ms. Langell, thank you. I think we're going to have some discussion. I see Councillor McGrath and then Councillor Graham are in the queue. So, Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm usually pretty quick to make or second motions. I'm hesitating tonight because of the comments that I've made, but I've talked about some of the concerns that I have. I'm not saying that I don't support this development, but I don't really support how it's been presented tonight. I think it needs more time for the developer to come back with some of those more realistic expectations and some of those better renderings. And should this motion fail, I would move that the developer return to this committee at a future date to repeat step 3 with that additional information for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McGrath. I'll just hold that while we're dealing with this motion, if that's okay. Councillor Graham?
I will not be supporting the motion as presented. I believe strongly that the cart is before the horse. Until a roundabout is constructed at this intersection, I do not believe that adding more traffic at this intersection is prudent. I'm also hesitant because while the traffic study indicates that roundabout is warranted at this intersection, it doesn't mean that council or the town have the money to make that investment at this time or any time for that matter. 3 years ago, the intersection at Willow and McClure's Mills cost us approximately 3 million, sorry. Who's to say it's not going to double by the time we are ready to construct one at this intersection? Without having a firm financial plan and a firm commitment from council to construct a roundabout at this area, I certainly can't support the development application at this time. And it is regrettable because I actually quite like the development, but don't feel the infrastructure is in place at this time to support a motion to move forward with it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and I think discussion has taken place. So if somebody would like to call for the question. Okay, Deputy Mayor Thomas, you wish to speak again?
Yes, I'd just like clarity from you. If it's approved, what happens? If it's not approved, what happens? Just so that people understand.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
So if it doesn't proceed, the way that I understood Councilor McGrath's motion would be that it would come back to this committee with more refined drawings, some more details around some of the questions raised tonight. That's what he's proposed. But it also could, if the decision is to refuse it by this committee, that just goes forward to public hearing and council with a negative recommendation from the committee. So you have to be very careful about the wording of, if you do choose to, if the intent is for this to come back to this committee with additional information, I think you defer the vote and have them come back.
Okay.
I can appreciate Mr. McGrath's concern about, the depiction of the AI-generated sort of streetscape and surrounding buildings, but I don't see that as prohibitive to me because, I have an imagination. It is an imagination. I can put those buildings in there. I'm really concerned about the project, and I think the depiction here shows us very clearly, and I think you've done a wonderful job, actually, of showing the development itself. The surrounding buildings, no, but, I can put them in there in my mind mentally, but it allows me to see the development which is in question. So I'm not in favor of coming back with, altered drawings. I don't depictions. I don't see that as sufficient. But so that if you have another reason why you'd like it to come back, besides that, I would support it. But other than that, I don't support it coming back here. I do support having a vote tonight, though.
Thank you. So I'm just trying to walk this through myself because we have either an approve or a deny, and if we deny this, then this project could go forward to council or would go forward or could.
If the committee recommends refusal, that's the recommendation that proceeds to council. So council's process continues regardless of what this committee does.
And this committee has finished its relationship with this project.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Call the question, please.
Okay, so as I previously put into the minutes, I don't want to repeat the recommendation again just because of its length. So all those in favor of the recommendation to send this project with an approval rating to council, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. And all those in contrary-minded who wish not to approve the project, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, so I think my vote is, yeah, I think my vote is taken off the table, is it not? No? It's just a tie. Okay. Okay, so the motion has not been passed because we do not have a majority. So you may still take the project forward to council, but it won't be with the recommendation of this committee as it is presented. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Time to go home.
I'll double check to make sure it's still on. But you know Peter Hackett?
Okay, we do have another item on our agenda, so if all of you who are only here for the Lower Truro application, if you could quietly leave, we would appreciate it. Oh, yeah.
You know, you have a gavel, go to town.
I can't.
I have that thing worn out by now.
Okay, so the next, excuse me, we're running a meeting here, so if you could all please, if you're finished, please exit the room, and otherwise we will be continuing on with 656 Yonge Street. I did it. All right, so this is another preliminary report by Planner McPherson. So this will not be something that the committee will vote on today, and we're not really at the stages at this point, my understanding is, at least. Mr. McPherson, feel free to add any context to that if you wish, just because it is a little outside the norm. But we did have the same situation with the owner on Alice Street the last time. So this is sort of an information gathering session, I understand, maybe. Okay. So this is a numbered company at the top of Yonge Street, 656 Yonge, and Planner McPherson, I will let you take it away.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everybody who stuck around. So this is a report concerning 656 Yonge Street, and just to provide a little bit of context on the application, it's to develop 218 residential units. This application was first made in January of 2024, and it's been before the Planning Advisory Committee before. So currently the application is between step 2 and step 3, and the applicant was not available to present at this meeting. And so it's an opportunity that we're using to, with the applicant's permission, provide an update on this project without progressing to step 3, to provide the committee with an opportunity to review new public input that's come in, that's contained in the package, and as well there will be a question about a public open house. So just some background on the project. The subject lands are situated on Yonge Street, south of the intersection of Yonge Street and William Barnhill Drive. Site situated opposite from the access road to the water treatment plant. The lands are also very close to the Yonge Street entrance to Victoria Park, as well as the rail yard mountain bike park. So this section of Yonge Street is largely undeveloped. A lot of the lots are vacant, although there are older residential properties to the north and south along Yonge Street. Here's a picture of the subject lands looking north along Yonge Street. So on the property, there is an existing single-story storage building, but it's otherwise vacant and undeveloped. Most of the property has been cleared, and the northern edge is wooded. At the northeastern corner of the property, adjacent to Yonge Street, the land slopes down to a watercourse located just off the property. This is the subject property as shown on the town's policy area map, showing that it is designated as future growth. And this is the subject property on the town's zoning map, showing that the property is zoned as future growth, urban growth, and in the northeast corner, environmental reserve. This is the most recently submitted site plan of the proposed development. It features 3 multi-unit residential buildings. They sort of form like a U shape that frames a large green space in the middle, like in the center of the development. And then there are townhouse units that are arranged in 4 groups along Yonge Street. The development would be accessed off of an entryway off of Yonge Street there in the bottom right of that picture. Parking for the townhouse units would include individual garages in each unit along with a small surface parking area adjacent to the townhouse units, and the parking for the multi-unit buildings would be at grade. And then there would be parking along each building, as you can see here, along the sides and behind the buildings. And so the multi-unit buildings are all proposed to be 6 stories high. The townhouse 3 stories for a total of 218 units with 268 parking spaces. So since this application was first in front of the committee, the applicant has adjusted some of the overall aspects of the design. And this includes substituting the underground parking for at-grade parking. That was their decision. The addition of 1 story to each multi-unit building to accommodate the at-grade parking as opposed to the underground. So the buildings essentially move up a floor because you're moving the underground to at-grade. The removal of a proposed road into the property, you can see that in the graphic in the bottom. Originally, the idea is that it would go all the way along the property. Instead, it would just start off of Yonge Street and then connect into the property. And the setback on the northern building, so let's go back to here, has been increased several times. And so initially it was 14 feet or about 4.27 meters. It's been increased to 44.8 feet, so 13.65 meters. New renderings were also provided by the applicant. So here's a view of the courtyard looking north. Here's an aerial view of the courtyard, and this is looking south. So you can see the central green space in there, and then in the top left of this image, you can see the townhouses, and the multi-unit buildings are on the right. And here's a view of the entrance of the proposed development looking west. To speak to the key policies for this application, policy FG26 is what enables council to consider this proposal by development agreement. In addition, for this area of town, council's adopted the South End Future Growth Area Conceptual Plan, and this directs future growth in this area along with roadway connections. Policy IM40 specifically asks for a public information meeting, such as an open house, to be considered when a development agreement application faces a great deal of public opposition or concern. So since the last time that this was before PAC, received new written correspondence. It was submitted by 2 residents in the neighborhood, as well as a summary that was submitted from a community meeting of the Truro Black Community Development Association. And so that was submitted, and it specifically regarded just this application. In discussion with residents, there's been requests for an opportunity for the public to discuss the project with the applicant before moving to step 3. The written submissions are attached as a part of the package for this meeting, but generally speaking, the submissions spoke to the conflict between the proposed multi-unit buildings and the keeping of horses and bees on a nearby property, the proximity of the northernmost apartment building to the neighboring single detached dwelling, preserving the general character of this part of Yonge Street, the effect of traffic and overflow parking, stormwater runoff, and a nearby landfill site. There were some concerns about health that are expanded on in one of the letters submitted. So staff is recommending that PAC requests the applicant to hold a public information session prior to step 3, and that's really one of the greater purposes for having this meeting, is that the last time that PAC saw this application, these concerns really hadn't been raised, and so this is an opportunity for members of the public to provide a bit of input, which they've already done through their written submissions, but it's an opportunity for a bit of dialogue, and as well as staff's recommendation, if PAC wishes to, have the applicant host a public information session so that members of the community have the opportunity, both in an afternoon and evening session, to speak to the developer about the development, more opportunity to gather public input. So if that were to occur, the the public information session would happen prior to step 3, and then would proceed to step 3, which is the main community engagement. It's another opportunity for the public to speak to and for PAC to consider the application, and then it would move on to a public hearing, just like the previous application. But that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll be taking notes as we discuss so I can relay them to the developer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McPherson. Councillor Graham?
Thank you. Just for clarity on the process, so tonight we will be concluding step 2. Is that correct?
So step 2 has already been concluded, so.
Oh, step 2, okay.
And the next step would be to move to step 3, but since things are changing a little bit, it's an opportunity to sort of make some assessment.
Okay, thank you for the clarity on that. Is there any policies that address livestock or the bees that we can reference when we're making some decisions or considering this application?
So Truro's land use bylaw does speak to the keeping of these kinds of livestock, and it is a permitted use, and so the neighboring property does have the ability to continue to host these animals. And I don't mean to speak for those that I've heard from, but I have been speaking to them pretty regularly. I think a large part of the concern is that the people living there won't enjoy, for instance, a manure pile or bees flying around on the property, and they're worried about the conflict that'll create, even if they have legal right to host these uses on their property as existing uses that are grandfathered or legally non-conforming.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Do you have at your fingertips, and if not, you can send them to me another time, the policies that are relevant to being allowed to keep the bees and the livestock?
I had to register with the government. I'm registered with the provincial government.
I can send you the relevant information from the community plan regarding keeping horses and bees.
Thank you. I understand what you're saying. I was wondering about our town policies that permit it, but I appreciate that you also have probably the province, is it? Yeah. Thanks.
I believe Councillor McGrath is next. Oh, I apologize. Deputy Mayor Thomas.
Right. Thought I changed the order up tonight. I personally, I've got a little experience with bees, and I don't think bees will be an issue. It's an issue maybe around the hive, but, the next property over, not much of an issue. That's why we could keep bees across the town. As long as you don't have, 300 hives or something, there's a restriction. You have 40 hives. Oh, okay. Well, just a minute now. I didn't know it was 40. So well, I'll pull back on that. The need to, but generally, their flight path, they're busy. They're busy bees, and they just come back and forth, and they don't seem to harm anybody. The need to move the building, it was said in the comments, 50 feet would be sufficient from the property line of the neighbor on the north side. And I think now, I don't have it written down, but I think it was 40-something feet. And I would like the developer to consider moving the building 50 feet from the property line. I think I think it's doable considering there's a courtyard in the middle of it, but I'll leave that to you and the developer. I'm concerned about the brook, the water course that's neighboring, that's next to the neighboring property, et cetera. And I don't know the stormwater management. I don't know how stormwater is handled in that area. I believe there is underground pipes for stormwater management. But could you just clarify that, please? Because there's a ditch work up there as well.
In some of the areas, there is ditch work, so it'd be overland flow.
Right.
There are catch basins down further, and there is a storm system there as well.
Right. Well, it's important. I know it'll require stormwater management, and I understand that no more water can leave the site following development, as it was prior to development. But I am concerned about that water course. When it rains hard, that water course or that brook is full. It kind of rages a little bit.
So our driveway is so full that the town
Right.
new cauldrons in crushed rock.
Right. So it's at a point where, it really needs to be looked at to make sure that there's not more runoff coming off that property in earnest and at least not going into that brook, right? Because I think that's an issue. That's my experience with that. And also, I think, and I would like to suggest that a proper landscape plan needs to be in place prior to the occupation permit. And I'll tell you why. It's because there's a real concern of the neighbor on the north side, and I'd like to ensure that there's a proper landscape plan in place. The assurance that I'd like to see, the assurance as a council member, that the assurance that there's going to be trees planted along there that will give you the privacy you're looking for, the sound barriers, right? And at 50 feet and then put trees in there, and I'd like to see a plan to do that. I'd like to see that in place. I think that's a reasonable thing to ask, but I'll leave that with the planning department. And lastly is parking. I'm getting a little concerned. I know that this one here is, I can't remember, is it 1.28 or something for parking? Something like that. And when I read through it was hours ago that I read through it, but it's over 1.28 or something. Anyways, my point being is that I don't think we, excuse me, I'm going to press on. I don't think that there should be parking on Yonge Street. I just find it, I think it's a busy street. Traffic flows freely there, and I think it's not a good idea. I think there should be sufficient parking so that there's no parking on the street, that there's sufficient parking.
Now from these new ones they just built, there's parking the whole way.
Yeah, so, I just want to make sure that's sufficient. So, yeah, for traffic reasons and because I just think there's ditching along there and it's just not unless we're going to put curbs and sidewalk or whatever and broaden the street, So that's my 2 cents worth.
Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in agreement with the Deputy Mayor that traffic does flow fairly freely up that section of Yonge Street, too freely. In fact, I think that's where Truro Police Service find a lot of speeders. I concur that we should not be parking along Yonge Street, that especially in that area. I would, I do think we have discussed this before at this committee and at council. I believe that we would be looking at putting in sidewalks and things at some point up there, but not until some of that development happens. we're not going to put in sidewalks there and then have all these heavy trucks driving over to get to the destinations and do this building. What I do want to do, though, is move to a motion that this committee require the developer to hold a public information session prior to proceeding to step 3, if I could get a seconder for that. Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councillor McGrath, and it's been seconded by Councillor Graham. Is there further discussion on that? The motion being that a public hearing is a requirement prior to this developer being able to come back to this committee for step 3. Okay, the question has been called for. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, motion carried. Anything further? I'll just, a couple points. I agree with what Deputy Mayor Thomas and Councillor McGrath have been saying. And, you know, I am not usually the one to push parking, but my exception would be these developments at the top of Yonge. I don't think this is the same as a downtown development where we are expecting that people might be able to walk places. Nobody is walking to this development, and I think we're creating a problem, and this development will only make it worse. So, Mr. McPherson, again, can you remind us of the number of units in total and the number of parking spaces that this development has? And then I would think that we might, as a committee, want to put forward some type of a recommendation that Mr. McPherson can communicate to the developer about the parking situation.
So there's 218 units in the proposal. In terms of the parking space, this has changed over time, and I am still waiting for a updated parking count for the at-grade parking spaces, so it is subject to change. At a time, initially, it had been a number of parking spaces that had been 108 vehicles at grade and 111 vehicles in the outdoor parking spaces for a total of 219, which would make for 1.05, and that number increased when the applicant provided a new updated plan. And so, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the number is still subject to change. So if PAC wishes to make a recommendation about what that number be, I think that's still within the realm of possibility.
Okay, and Mr. Bent, is that a street that has parking permitted on it, or is it just so new that well, not new, but you know, so this is all changing so quickly that there's no signage up there? Like, what's the town's take on?
In that section, it's shouldered, and there's not no parking sections there. And the location of the other development on Yonge Street, there has been no parking signs put up.
There has been?
Yep.
And, okay.
Because of how narrow it makes the street with parking on both sides.
Okay, so this is an issue then, it's...
Yeah, this area is different because it's shouldered. It doesn't have curb on both sides, so there is room for vehicles pulling on the shoulder, but it's not something that we've looked at too in depth, but it may be some direction that we want to go forward because it is it's a collector for the town of Truro, so a lot of traffic drives on that street, so.
And would the expectation be that there would be curbing when if this development were to go in?
I don't know if I have that information right now, but I don't know what the future plan is for.
Okay. And then, Mr. McPherson, my other question is, and I think like Deputy Mayor touched on it, but I just wasn't sure what has there been a change since our last meeting about this project with respect to the buffer, and what is the newest proposal I know there is sort of a little bit of a buffer around Mr. Paris's property that's not, I think it's not Mr. Paris's property, and it doesn't appear to be part of this project. So do you know the distance of that? And then this vegetation buffer along property boundary, I agree with Deputy Mayor Thomas that that should be a part of the development if this is approved, that there is, you know, not these spindly little cedars, like there needs to be some type of a vegetation plan there. But what is the distance behind the 6-story building until we get to the boundary of Mr. Paris's property?
So the boundary from the building to the property line is 44.45 feet, or about 13.65 meters. And then the additional, that sliver of property, I don't have that information offhand, but I can provide it for step 3. But I can provide that information for the next meeting to show an overall sense of where the building relates to the overall development, and to show the distance all the way back to that home.
Okay. And Mr. Paris, I know you've come, and thank you very much for your patience. It's been a bit of a long meeting. I think we should let you have the microphone and you can speak to the committee if you'd like to, or your son or Mr. Jackson might want to.
Thanks, folks. I was glad to hear some of your comments. Microphone. Oh. Never used a mic in such a small audience before. Some of your comments did connect to some of the concerns that the family has had around stormwater runoff because their homestead is downhill or below that proposed site. So it was great to hear that. Just a quick update. The community, when I say the community, you had about 22 or so folks out in November, about 6 months ago, because we thought there was a follow-up meeting earlier in December that was delayed. So I just want you to know that, because we 3 are here tonight, but there were many other folks involved in November in terms of, I think, some of the comments, Jacob, the folks do have. They're privy to some of those notes from that meeting. Yes, and just a quick check. There was a recommendation from that meeting in terms of setback. Was it an additional 50 feet or 50 feet, or minimum 50? We can deal with that later, but I just wanted to make sure that that was in there, because that's a critical point in terms of setback. Minimum 50 feet, I think it was, or an additional minimum. In any event, just a couple of things I really wanted to mention. And the family can speak after I speak, but having visited with them a few times, even prior, before this came up, and just hearing the stories about being able to live in that area, that multi-generational homestead that goes back probably over 100 years, to folks that are no longer with us today, and a larger lot at one time. I think the family, they do sit on a 1.5 acre lot, which is not common these days for in and around the Truro area, which has allowed them, you know, to establish a way of life that's probably quite unique in terms of being in Truro, in terms of stabling, 3 horses and beekeeping and so on and so forth, which I think has been quite incredible. I bring that up because there are policies here, and I'm not quite sure how they connect, but policy IM-22A, in terms of compatibility of the proposed land with adjacent land uses, and I'm not sure if we're talking about land uses in terms of private land uses in terms of what they've been doing, or other types of land uses, but I know down the road that would be something I would be concerned about in terms of that compatibility. And again, the family's not naive. There's going to be development there. There's not going to be development. The concern is how much of an impact it has on their way of life that they've been enjoying for generations, which, as people in the room know, that I'm passionate about. And not to give a history lesson, but when folks were forced to move out of town, or not allowed in certain parts of town, and were forced up that way, and having now to be forced in many ways out of there and to go someplace else, that hits me hard. And I was going to save this for total council, but it's kind of ironic that the existence of a dump in their backyard was one of the things that actually saved their way of living. That's quite ironic, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dump was a way of keeping that community intact, and now that it's gone, it's so attractive that
that community is going to disappear because of it for the most part. In any event, I don't want to go down that road because I do get a little emotional. So if there's any way the Planning Advisory Committee can keep some of those things in mind, and in Part B to that same policy, it talks about compatibility as well with adjacent structures in terms of height, scale, lot coverage, density, and bulk. And I certainly agree. We talked about that buffer zone in terms of having some trees there. We are worried about runoff. And we know when vegetation leaves, and you have a lot of pavement or non-rooted plants, or not non-rooted plants, but you don't have plant life there to absorb some of the runoff. That's certainly a concern. One of my biggest things when I looked at this scaling here, the rendering in terms of the design, my first thought was if there's at all any recommendations from PAC through the community, it certainly could be around the townhouses. You have the largest structure there bordering the only homestead in the area. There's lots of room. There's 3 other sides to that development that's forested, no housing for the most part. Why couldn't there be some consideration to mitigate the impact that having those townhouses along that northern border with some increased vegetation? That would help the situation, I feel, a great deal. I'm not quite sure how that sort of thing works, but to me that would be a no-brainer recommendation from my standpoint. But again, that certainly will probably come up at another time. And environmental impacts, there certainly would be some in my mind in terms of just the fact that this young man here, he's a beekeeper, and it has a lot to do with his life, with his passions, and we all have passions, and that would be one of them. I would hate to see that impacted in a negative way because of this. So anything we can do, and I think there was even a recommendation in there if they had to be relocated to help with some relocation, even on town property across the street or the park or some area. And again, that's a concern that would be interrupted. I know we'll have a chance to probably speak at later sessions, so I believe the community would, because community will show up at later rounds. And again, I am glad we're here, even though it's been a few hours, and I'm looking forward to having supper tonight at some point. My one concern, only because of my past interest in it, is you know, the ability of schools in the area to absorb whatever impact it might have. I know the elementary school is maxing out, and the middle school is if it's not there, is close to getting there with the introduction of pre-primary and so on to school. So I know you folks have a lot on your plate. Development's going to happen. Again, if there's any ways to mitigate impact and maintain people's way of life, and the way of life that they have only in that place, and for generations, and even now, there wasn't the option of living wherever you want to live in Truro for a lot of folks, and this family's one of them. I'll be very honest with you. So if I just want you to, even though it's difficult, to imagine that. We talk about, well, we'll just move to this apartment, we'll just go there, we'll just move to another place. Well, that's not as easy for a lot of folks, and it's still not in 2026. So if we can maintain some semblance of their way of life, that certainly would be greatly appreciated. So, Mr. Paris, I don't know if there's anything else to add. I know we'll be able to speak again at subsequent sessions, and Aaron?
I'm upset how you got me upset.
I got you upset, okay. I'm glad I was here to hold him back earlier, though, because I don't think that gentleman turned around to see who was behind him. So, anyways, we're good, yeah. So, are you guys folks? You folks fine? We're good?
My thing is that I asked them, you guys, a long time ago, if I could put bees in the old dump. I mean, you didn't have no problem when me and the kids were running through there when we were kids. You didn't say nothing. But then you had the nerve to tell me, I can't. What's his name? That was in the office, the engineer. Yeah, Andrew had the nerve to tell me that he would not approve my bees to go in the old dump because it would kill my bees, is what he told me. But yet you would build 3 feet from the dump that has methane gas coming out of this dump. There's methane gas vents coming out of this dump. What's the levels? Can you guys give me a methane gas level or a methane gas test that was ever done to that old dump? What's the levels? You're building next to it. I mean, what's the levels? You're not supposed to build next to a dump site. They got methane gas pipes coming out of there, and nobody knows the levels.
I can speak to that only briefly. So the methane levels are a part of a study. It's part of the wildfire prevention plan.
Yep.
And it's being investigated as part of that. It's still underway.
Didn't they do this because the dump was shut down in 91 or 80? They never did a test then when they put the vents up. So how come, like, I mean, there should have been a test way back in the day.
And there was a decommission plan. I don't have the decommission plan here, but I do know that as part of the wildfire protection plan for protecting that part of the forest, that it's included in that, and that is being investigated as part of that. So we will have values and information from that. We just don't have it yet.
I would have liked it back then when we were up there.
This is the leachate pond.
Yep.
Thank you, folks. I'm sure we'll see you again, sir. And, good night.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And Mr. Jackson and Mr. Paris, Mr. McPherson will let you know the date of the public hearing.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Which I can't recall. We did vote on that, right? We did, okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so the next meeting that is scheduled is, the date would fall on June the 29th, which is the same day as CEC graduation. So are there any comments on that, whether that is a conflict for which we should reschedule? Okay, sorry, hang on. I heard you, but it would be a conflict for you?
My daughter's graduating that day.
You should probably be there.
I kind of got to go.
Haley?
Do I have to press anything?
Nope, you're good.
I feel like it might be a conflict for like community members who want to come. So I feel like we should probably.
Yes, I was also thinking the same, if there were people who wanted to be in attendance, not on the committee. Okay, well, I guess we'll just re-adjourn in September. Okay, sounds good. I'm just kidding. You want to send out? Okay. Okay, well, thank you. Unless there's anything more to be brought before the committee, if somebody would like to move to adjourn, thank you. Meeting adjourned.